Thank you for joining us on the RP Experience. I'm your host, Andrew Regenard, and today we have one of our preferred partners, Tony Spano, with Your Home Magazine, and we have one of our top producing agents, Nick Spano, with Equity Realty. Welcome, guys. I'm glad to have you both, the father-son duo.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So today's topic, we're really going to be diving into marketing, and we'll be discussing the farming and branding benefits of marketing. Tony, you've been a partner with us for a long time now. We appreciate that. You've been helping a lot of realtors. You deal with a lot of realtors. Just tell us a little bit about how you got down here and your backstory.
Well, it starts back in 1977, believe it or not. When I first came to Naples, a friend of mine found it via his dad, via his uncle, and I moved in with him and got in the publishing business and have been in it ever since.
I love it. I mean, back in the day, Naples was probably a little bit different.
A little bit.
But I still understand why you wouldn't never leave, because it's beautiful down here. And then obviously we got your son on here, Nick. So my guess is you obviously born down here with your father. Is that true?
Yeah, but there was I was born in Boynton Beach, so at some point family moved over there. That's where I was born. Grew up in Deerfield Beach, and then we moved to Naples when I was I think 2003, 2002 is when I came here. I was probably 12, 13 years old. Came to Naples. Grew up here. Yeah.
That's awesome. Would you ever move away?
No. And in fact, every time I leave Naples, I come back and go, this is way better than where I just left.
I always ask that question, just a curiosity, if there's someone's going to be like, yeah, I want to leave. You know, because it really is paradise, and so I'm always trying to figure out why would people leave. I mean, I understand the stints, like after like high school or something, they would move and they come back. You know, but
most people come back. They leave for 5 years and come back.
Yeah. So Tony, you obviously been in the publishing realm for a long time. Something you and I have in common. And you know, what other publishing experience do you have?
Well, I've always been in publishing, and I started a company on the other coast before I came here. No, I guess it was during that stint when we went to the East Coast. I sold that to the Miami Herald, and then I started Home and Design magazine here in Naples back in 2000, and I sold that out to my manager and an investor, and so I've kind of have been on my own for the last few years, and I mistakenly went into real estate. I say mistakenly because that's the wrong place to go if you're retiring.
Yeah.
Everybody complains about realtors don't work hard enough. They work too hard.
Yeah.
Saturdays, 24/7.
Oh, for sure.
And that's not what I wanted to do. So it was downtown Naples, and I did about 8 months and realized you can't make any money working 10 to 4 or 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of went full circle and went back into publishing.
Right.
The non-compete kind of had something to do with that. So
there you
I
go.
had to give it a little time.
Yep, for sure. Now, you've been running Your Home Magazine for quite some time, or created it and been operating it. Why has it been so successful? Because I feel like every agent that we interview and talk to with real producers is somehow associated or is on the waiting list for a community.
Yeah, I think the reason is, and although we can have a whole discussion on this, the major difference between one realtor and the next is marketing. Mm-hmm. They're all nice people. Everybody lives by a code of ethics. Particularly here in Naples, I don't think I've ever heard a bad word said about another realtor. Everybody works together. But the big differentiation
Your dad doesn't go to the happy hours, does he?
Yeah. I've heard a few things here and there.
Yeah. I was like, I can't say the same thing.
But mostly true. I agree. Mostly true. Yeah.
Well, at least in my world, nobody says.
Let's just say if they are bad mouthing, they're probably not going to last long, right? Because they have to figure a way to get along with everyone. Otherwise, they're not going to last long.
You have to work with them. Yeah. And I should preface it by saying that something bad is like, I'd like to not say anything about him.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a bad thing.
Yep.
In other words, I don't want to say anything.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the difference that I found from my home and design experience, from my Your Home experience, the difference is marketing and the big boys market.
I'd say one big difference is the exclusivity, right?
Exclusivity is huge.
Can you explain that?
Well, most media doesn't offer any kind of exclusivity.
Right.
There's always 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 other competitors right behind you. Everything we do is exclusive. So probably the toughest part of my job is having to tell people, sorry, the community that you farm is taken and I can't offer it to you.
Right.
Just had that happen. I have somebody that lives in the reserve, and they called up about the reserve, and the reserve's already taken. But they're looking at 2 other communities. So that exclusivity is a double-edged sword. But from a realtor standpoint, once you lock up your community, it's a very good thing because the other people can't do anything about it.
So, Nick, how did you go from watching your father in publications and print media to being like, I want to sell homes?
It's kind of he's the reason I got my license. I remember, I've been full-time realtor since 2014, and you've had your broker's license for, how many decades? I don't know.
Since early 80s.
Early 80s.
A broker.
And I remember, I was going to college part-time, still living at home, and Dad came into my room one day. I was like, you should get your real estate license. And that was probably 2013. Went out and got it a few months later. Here I am. There's a lot of steps in between, but yeah, he's the reason I have it. Yeah.
Now he has a broker's license.
Correct.
There's tons of brokerages out there. What do you look for in a brokerage? Because you've been at yours for 6, 7 years now?
Yeah, at least 6, probably more like 7 years.
Yeah. What's Equity Realty do that a lot of others don't? There's
a ton of great brokerages, and they're all structured different ways, and depending on how you build your business, one might appeal to you versus another. But Equity is we're a small brokerage. It's more like a team than a brokerage, honestly. But for me, it was the support. I get leads through Equity, lots of leads. I get tons of back-end and front-end support. So we have assistance on pre-contract and post-contract, from scheduling to disclosures to listing input. It's all done as much as I want to utilize it. Some of that stuff I like to do myself, but if I'm out showing property and I need showing scheduled or a listing put in the MLS, it's one email away. All that's done. That's to me the biggest advantage because the money's made in selling homes. It's not filling out HOA disclosures. Right. So if they can free me up to go out and do what I do best, then that's
you're
worth
a
it.
selling machine.
Absolutely.
Or buy a machine, one of the two, right?
Both.
What with the farming that we're talking about in the marketing,
sure.
What area do you specifically or mostly participate in? Yeah,
so for me, I live in Bonita Springs. I'm in the process of building another home in Bonita Springs, Eastern Bonita. And that's where the mailer that I do is done. And that's where I'm seeing results with it. But I sell all over. When I'm on the buyer side, I really don't have an area, just one area I focus on. But for listings, primarily Northeast Bonita, Bonita National, Seasons, Bonita Landing, Valencia, that area.
When realtors obviously go through their course or they get instruction from others, or we're talking about it right now, why is farming so brought up? Like, why is farming so important? And this is for both of you.
Well, I think listings are, at the end of the day, you make money with buyers and sellers. Both, you get commissions on both. But listings, if you had to pick one side of the business to be on, you want the listings. There's no question. I don't think anybody would disagree with that for a variety of reasons. But you can double dip. You get both sides of a deal. Listings generate their own buyers too. So if you have a listing, you're going to get calls off your for sale sign, off your Zillow. You get calls off that. So you can generate business off of listings.
Right.
It's much more difficult to do that with buyers. So, and the number you can carry, you could carry, there's agents in town that carry 100 listings. Well, used to anyway, not in this market. But, 2 years ago, they had 100 listings, literally.
Yeah. There's 100 listings, just not carried by the same agent.
One per agent at this point. But you cannot work with 100 buyers at a time. It's physically impossible. So you could probably, I say 7 to 8 buyers at a time is where you max out.
Right.
So, there's a variety of reasons, but that's why people talk about farming is at the end of the day, if you're going to be successful in real estate, you want listings. And one of the best ways to get listings is to farm.
Awesome. Your thoughts on farming?
Well, most of the big producers that I come in contact with farm an area. Very few people have the marketing budget to be everything, try and be everything to everybody. And by farming, you can focus your marketing efforts on 600, 700, 800 homes, 1,000 homes, whatever. I think our biggest client does 4,000 homes, and our minimum's 500. And we have people in every area. In fact, we've got a new program we just introduced where you can start with 500 and build that up over time. So you can start small, lock up an entire community, and grow into it.
Interesting.
In fact, we're kind of favoring that because we're of the mind that it makes more sense to start small and build than it does to bite off more than you can chew and quit.
Yeah.
Because one thing about farming, and I tell people this anymore, and I've heard it repeatedly from other clients we have, but it's about a 2-year process to get to where you want to go in farming. We mentioned
You're telling me, Tony, it doesn't happen overnight.
it doesn't happen.
Marketing
overnight.
doesn't happen overnight.
Nope.
Unfortunately, no. I wish it did.
blown.
Yeah.
Right?
It'd be nice
Well,
if it
but
did.
people don't think that.
No, they don't.
And you know who really doesn't think that? And what we're really not very good at is taking somebody from 0 to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
What we're real good at is 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 40. But if you're not already of the successful mindset,
Right.
this is the direction you want to head. We can't, you know, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink.
Exactly.
We find that a lot. So we just look for people that are successful.
And it's a lot more relevant, right? You're targeting a community, you're targeting a small area, you're targeting that group of people that hopefully that agent, right, is probably going to the social hours and going to the other things, or, you know, already has clients in there. So you're targeting a very small, hyper-focused niche area, which in my opinion is the key to marketing, right? Is finding that little groove and being the best in that groove, not trying to be all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually, believe it or not, I think it's woefully lacking in real estate school talking about marketing. Generally, they just teach you how to pass a test and throw you out in the street, and there you go. And you learn this from other people. I'm a big proponent or fan of Tom Ferry. He's the #1 trainer in the country, very pro farming. And he talks about the industry changing, and this is where you could probably add a lot more insight into this than I can. But with what's happening with Zillow entering the market and Trulia and all these things that are happening, if you're going to be a successful big-time realtor in the future, there's certain things that you're going to have to do marketing-wise, because you're not going to be able to compete with Zillow.
Like what? Or do you think the top 3, a realtor listening right now, it's like, I'm not getting involved in marketing enough? What would be the top 3 that you've learned through your experience and through through the podcast and the books and stuff?
I'm sorry, Andrew, top 3 what?
Advice, like the top 3 things that they could do as an agent to market to their potential clients, and or to generate leads.
Well, to start with, look at National Association of Realtors profile of home buyers and sellers. They do it every year. A lot of good data in there, but the most remarkable thing in my book is that 75% of people who sell their home only ever talk to one agent. 90% only ever talk to 2. So if you're not, from a marketing standpoint, if you're not top of mind, you're probably never getting the call.
Right.
To Nick's term, when you spend money with some of the big companies, and I don't want to, they're all the same.
Right.
If they want you to spend your money with them, and they aggregate leads, but that's more on the buyer side. When you see any of those companies out there that sell leads, they're selling buyer leads. Well, if the name of the game is to be on the listing side, you're totally barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
In my book. And ironically, all of those services are free if you have the listing. That's what's really ironic. You can pay big money to Zillow or, well, whoever.
Yeah.
I don't want to mention any names, but it's not just them. It's the 50 other ones.
Sure. And they're popping up left and right.
Left and right. And
I want a little of that market share, right? That's what the newbie is saying. I can do it better than the big,
Sure.
so-and-so company, yeah.
And they go to the stock market and they raise a bunch of money in an IPO, and the next thing you know, they've got money to throw around, and they're in that game. Yep. Tom Ferry says it's not the top 3 big names that we all know. It's the 50 that are right behind them.
Right.
That you got to, and he has a whole seminar on what are you going to do when Zillow opens up next door to you. And so you're your direct competitor. So, and Nick can speak to this, but I think you see
I know what the
changes
realtors are going to do. They're going to start egging it.
Yeah,
Maybe a little worse than
see, but
egging.
that's all on the
That's the PG version of it, right?
exactly.
That's the buyer side. But if you're hyper focused in your marketing in a farm area, and it doesn't have to be a geographic farm. There's people that farm niches, like just doctors or just architects or just whatever's. They become it in sports. That's a big one. I was reading one of your magazines in the lobby, and she's one of the agents that you featured in the magazine, specializes in sports marketing. Well, that's her niche. Well, that's a farm. It's just not a geographic farm.
Right.
Now, the easy way for us is to identify communities. What we do right now when we market is we look for people first that live in the community. We find that to be one of the keys to successfully farming. If you actually live in the community, particularly a gated community, because how do you get behind the gate and socialize at the clubhouse and play golf and walk your dog and do all these kind of things if you don't live there?
So you mean gated communities like all of Florida?
All of Southwest Florida.
Yeah, all of Southwest Florida.
Yeah, I don't think there's any non-gated.
I know people come down
except
here
mine.
like, wait,
I
all
get that
these are gated? I'm like, yep.
I get that
single one.
question all the time, which is why is all the communities gated? Other people from other parts of the country do not see a gated community ever, and they come here and everything's gated.
I know, and then you talk to the people up north or whatnot. You're like, I live in a gated community. Like, ooh, you fancy? It's like, no,
it's actually a $300,000 condo. It's
Yeah,
just everything's gated. Yeah.
everything's gated. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I think that Dad's totally right on that. But living in the community, I think also farming. If you just send mailers out and expect that to be the one ticket to listing success, I think that's a mistake. I think you have to pair it with also showing up to the club, meeting people, shaking hands. Like it's one arrow in the arsenal of getting listings. It's an important one, but if you're just doing it, it's going to take you a long time. It needs to be paired with the agents that I know that are super, super successful are very involved in the social scene of whatever community or niche, or be it boaters, golfers. I mean, they're out there shaking hands and meeting people too. And that you have to pair both. I think that's where it gets really, really potent, is if you're also in their mailbox every month, but they know your face and they come to your house for drinks, twice a month. That's where it gets really good.
And it's a big bucket, right? It's the marketing bucket, right? And now with technology and day and age, they have to see our faces and our brand so many more times to be recognized, because they're getting inundated with all of the different streams of media, right? So it's just it's another touch point. But you're totally right. I mean, that's the process, that's the reason why Real Producers does what it does, right? We have the social gatherings, we have the print, we have the podcast here online. We have all these different sources so that they keep, meeting you, remembering you, and everything like that. So there's so many different aspects of the marketing that people don't realize. They think it's just one interaction, but realtors, you guys get approached and you're busy and you're running around. And so if you're not maintaining that top of mind right away all the time, when you're ready to sell, it's like, I forgot.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Someone else swooped in and was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm a realtor.
Yeah, meet you on the golf course.
There's only a couple down here in Southwest Florida too.
Barely,
So.
like 5
Everybody
or 6,
has a story on that one. You forgot to call me.
I know.
I've been it's interesting because, well, again, back to Tom Ferry. He actually says farming's the second best source of business. The best source of business is your past book of business. In other words, when you've been in this business, the people that I've met that have been at it 10, 15, 20 years, they don't even take on new people anymore. They just they work off of past customers and repeat business. I think you're just starting to have that happen.
Yeah, I've noticed a big change in the last couple of years on that. I'd say 6+ years in is where I've really started to see a turnover of past clients and getting that business. But I think that's actually, full disclosure, the biggest mistake I made in real estate was not from day one, the first house I ever sold, getting them on a mailing list or an email list and continuing to stay in touch with them. I think I do that now, obviously, but that probably cost me a bunch of business.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and people have asked me, what's one mistake you would change if I got my new realtors? And that's the one I always say is, first house you ever sell, save that address, text them twice a year, send them mailers once a month, like stay in touch with past clients from day one. I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's why we're going to introduce a piece that's it's like our trifold. It's just called Your Health instead of Your Home.
The listeners probably don't know what the trifold is exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, because the magazine, I mean, a lot of the agents, a lot of people have seen it. It's a beautiful, full publication for just that agent and just the residents in that community, right? And that's the exclusivity you talk about. Can you explain the trifold?
Yeah, actually what happened was we started with the magazine, and the magazine is kind of I call it the Bentley of products that you can mail, because the way we do it, we actually wrap common text with an individualized cover, so it actually looks like you produce your own home and garden magazine. Mm-hmm. It's very impressive. Mm-hmm. But then we realized coming into the market the way it is now, and that we needed more frequency. In fact, this is a recommendation by one of our clients is, can you do something that we have more frequency rather than the magazines are every other month.
Right.
But they wanted to touch every month. In fact, something good for your listeners, look up online the rule of 3-7-27.
Okay.
That's how it goes. That's the rule. But they're saying that it takes 3 touches or contacts to even know what you do, 7 to recognize your name. I think I might have that backwards, but 27 times to really brand yourself.
Right.
So we needed more frequency.
See, I heard a lower number than 27 a couple of years ago, but it just keeps going up.
Well, it keeps going up, number one. And number two, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said brand is more important now than ever. It's a multi-channel world.
Right.
We have more choices than we've ever had. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you start looking at how deep it goes, whatever you're looking at. If you just shop Amazon, well, there's like 50 different products that you can choose from. Well,
so true.
but you're going to go with the brand that you know and you trust. You have to, because you don't want to be disappointed online.
Or the one that looks the best.
But see, that's all brand now.
Right. But that's the thing. I don't know the brands, but this one looks the most trustworthy. I don't know why it looks, you know what I mean? It's like it's instilled in our brain.
Well,
Totally.
it's like Wayfair. Nice company. They do a ton of TV advertising. I just got a 72-page catalog in the mail. And Patrice is reading it, right? And she says, finally, somebody mailed something I could just sit down and look at. As opposed to that internet experience where you have to know what you're looking for. You have to go, it's a different experience. So, but anyway, to answer your question, the trifolds are kind of like a jumbo postcard on steroids. They fold over twice. So they fold down to being the same size as a jumbo postcard. But there's plenty of room for what you do, a market report in yours.
Yeah.
He
And I
did
still have
something.
space left over after a nice market report. So you could run just listed, just sold, pendings. I mean, stuff that you're limited if you just send a postcard out on what you can actually fit on it. This you can just fit a lot more content in this, and for practically the same price as a postcard. But yeah,
And we send out a fully prepared trifold every month. So you can use as much or as little of it as you want. And there's space on it to actually co-market with people, which now this really gets really interesting, because with 2 co-marketers, you can actually send out a trifold every month for less money than a postcard. And everybody's doing postcards. There's no exclusivity. So imagine the ability to have what appears to be, let's call it the Mercedes-Benz of mailers compared to the Rolls-Royce. I don't recommend, unless you're farming an area that is super high-end where you have people doing all kinds of outrageous things, you don't really need a magazine.
Right.
If you're in the Port Royal crowd, you do, just to be competitive and look like you're as good as they are. But if you're in that 4, 5, 6, 700,000, in fact, you've got a good story on that. We were doing the magazine. You go ahead and tell him in Naples Park. He was farming Naples Park, just switched.
Okay.
right.
Go ahead.
What's
and
the
tell him.
story?
Well, you were doing the magazine for
Right.
Naples Park, and we thought it was overkill, so he doubled his frequency in
Yeah.
the 4 communities.
Yeah, no, exactly what you're just saying. I mean, the magazine is fantastic if you're, Quail West, Mediterra, Taos Park, Port Royal. I mean, there's a certain demographic that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
But for 95% of communities, it's overkill, and it doesn't give you enough frequency. So the better option is actually the cheaper option, which is the trifold, which is once a month. That's what I do in my farm area. But frequency's better. I've already gotten better, more texts, more calls, more messages over that than I did the magazine. The magazine's great, but it takes more time because there's less frequency. With a mailer, there's more frequency, therefore quicker results.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Another thing, too, about the internet is it's almost impossible to reach everybody online. Not everybody's looking when you want them to look. You can't get everybody's email address. An online presence is more difficult than just mailing them something in their mailbox. It's very easy for us to determine exactly who and where we're going to mail to, and let the USPS be your delivery boy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I always get a kick out of the big trainers nationally talk about door knocking. Well, I think it's ironic that people take their marketing money and pay a trainer to tell them to do the things that are free. You can call FSBOs, you can call expireds, or you can door knock.
Yeah.
Those are the free things.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if you ever tried to door knock here in Florida, first off, if you could get past the gate.
I was just going to say, yeah.
That'd be
You're
number
taking your
one.
life into your hands on that one.
Yeah, by maybe the first house you get shot or the dog sick on you. By the 5th house, it looks like you just came out of the pool.
Yeah.
Right, it'd be soaking wet.
It's so
just
hot, yeah.
totally doesn't make any sense here in Florida.
Yeah.
But ironically, once you pay a trainer $800 or $900 a month, that's what they tell you to do.
Yep.
Because that's free. And you no longer have your $800 or $900 a month to invest in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of a love-hate relationship with trainers in that regard. But they're spot on, and all the big guys seem to have trainers.
Oh yeah, I mean, coaches is so
coaches.
important. I mean, I use coach within my business. I mean, everyone, I think, needs to look at someone else and ask, how can I be held more accountable, and or what as an outsider looking in, what can I improve on? We're always there to try to better ourselves, so we need advice and guidance.
Yep.
I think that's
Absolutely.
important.
But I think there's a little gap there. I think if you've got to be doing a certain amount of business, maybe
Agreed.
it's $5 or maybe it's $10 million worth of revenue, to have enough free money to pay the mentor or trainer or coach or whatever you want to call them, and still have marketing money left over to do the things that they're going to tell you to do.
Right, exactly, because you have to still eat, and live,
Yeah.
and have a house. So you have to look presentable when you go to these listing appointments, right?
Oh,
That suit's
Yeah.
not cheap.
So,
And
no, these are
what car
they're
you
shop.
pull up? What was the first thing? Remember what we did? First thing?
Day one, we went suit shopping. My first couple weeks of real estate.
Yeah, and then
that
how
was
about
fun.
the car?
Yeah.
We decided that he's got to be in a Mercedes if he's going to be doing real
I
estate.
did pay for that just so that
He paid for it. I suggested
He
it.
suggested I did. I was
He's
the one
giving
paying
good
for it.
advice,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
it was
Exactly.
advising you
Yeah.
what to
I would
swipe
have
the
loved to
card
be
on.
paid for it, but no, I paid for it.
I love it. Well, we are running out of time. I want to talk about really quick though, outside of real estate, right, and obviously publications, passions and love, and what do you guys do besides real estate?
Yeah, well, we're expecting our first daughter here in a couple weeks. So
Hey.
our first kid, who's going to be our daughter, but that's going to change things a lot. But passion for me, I've been playing a lot of pickleball lately. That's been I was a big tennis player for years, and then just kept hurting my back doing it, and I took up pickleball, and I don't think I'm going back. I love pickleball.
I heard it's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a great time.
I just
addicting.
talked to a couple buddies, and they're like addicted to the pickleball. I mean, it was like every 2 seconds they're asking me to play pickleball, and I'm like, how do you guys finish all this time? I was like, but they live on like the courses, or like they have it at their community or something, so they're playing it.
A lot of these new communities are now either converting tennis courts or building pickleball courts just by themselves, or they're converting tennis courts to pickleball. It's becoming that popular.
Love it. Well, guys, it's been absolute pleasure having you both on here. I really appreciate it. This is the first time that we can say that we had father and son, one of our partners and one of our top agents here on the podcast at the RP Experience. So thank you guys so much for coming
Thanks
on.
again for having us. This was fun.
Thank you.
Of
Appreciate it.
course. As always, Southwest Florida Real Producers is extremely thrilled to have you all on here. And we're pumped to bring real producers on air. Stay tuned for the next episode.